Welcome back, and some brand news in brief very quickly. In Cosmopolitan South Africa, encouraging its millennial audience to stay in touch by registering to vote in the 2019 election through a multi-pronged approach. What's the objective, you ask? Well, to end voter apathy among young people and to educate Cosmo readers about the various political parties' feminist and women's rights manifestos. I'm sure you'll agree with me, there seems to be a new hashtag, a trend, or a free from movement to keep track of every day. So how do brands and marketers, and I guess the media industry, keep abreast of these changes and perhaps more importantly stay relevant? It's all about relevance, isn't it? Well, it's called keeping up with the speed of culture. Yatish Narsi is the Chief Experience Officer at the agency Grid Worldwide and joins me, and hopefully to give us some insight into how all of that can be achieved. It's good to talk to you. What do we mean by the speed of culture?
When you flip through sort of news and social media and you see this sort of barrage of things being thrown at you, it is quite daunting. You do often feel like you can't keep pace and things are changing too quickly. You know, we take a slightly different view. I think the more and more you engage with it, the more you realize that there's a lot of chum for sure, and there's a lot of little things going on. But if you keep abreast of them, below the surface, you'll see change has always been quite glacial. You know, it moves along really slowly and you don't look at it, and then eventually a big piece of ice falls off the front face. And you look at that and think, wow, things are being disrupted, and they're not. I think any brand needs to just be wary, actually, of latching onto new trends and latching onto new ideas, because that's actually when the problems kick in.
But they feel this insidious pressure to do so, don't they?
They do. I mean, Gillette's a prime example. There's no question that some of those movements are around, and it's been building for a while now, between gender equality and Me Too, etc., etc. Whether or not you needed to solve that with a 30-second campaign is a different story altogether. So I think if you look at this more holistically and you treat it as something that needs to drive the business and not just messaging, you'll probably find more value out of looking at trends.
Okay, we featured the Gillette campaign on the program last week. I'll ask you the same question that I put to the panel. Did they have any choice but to follow a trend like that? Would it have been detrimental to their market share had they not done that?
We like to sort of ask ourselves and the brands we work on a few questions. Number one, how do you make an old brand relevant, right? If you're a brand that's been around for a long time, what are the things you need to do to stay relevant? The second thing is, how do you enter and capture a new market? And what you should be doing is, if you really want to play a meaningful role in that particular conversation, you should take it up in the right avenues. You know, often trying to solve it with marketing spin. People are sort of really cynical these days. They catch on to things really quickly. And so if you're trying to solve things with hashtags, the sort of armchair activist approach is just not going to work for brands.
Yeah, it seems to be that many brands think it's the panacea for everything, but it isn't. You used the word chum, which is interesting, that there's an enormous amount of that stuff in the marketing water. So to use another metaphor then, how does a brand then separate the wheat from the chaff? What's the strategic approach?
We spoke off air for a second, and my background is architecture, not marketing at all. And actually getting into marketing, I wasn't a huge fan, because, you know, marketing generally, I think I almost consider it a bit like, you know, those sort of telemarketing calls you get, right? Everybody's upset at them, everybody's annoyed at them. But whenever you put the phone down, you have to ask yourself, why would they be doing this for so long? Well, the reality is it must work to some degree, right? It obviously does, otherwise they wouldn't keep doing it. Often marketing is quite similar. I think we're going to find things are effective, we're going to find things are efficient, even if they aren't great. And if you drive around, if you look around, if you watch television, you'll probably see that 90% of what's thrown at you is actually, it's chum. 90% of it is not great, it's not meaningful, it's not relevant. And so the short answer for me would just be, for brands, businesses, agencies to do things that they honestly, truly believe make a difference, make an impact, and are iconic pieces of work, rather than going, the research tells me X, and I think I can exploit a certain trend in a certain way. Do it if it really means something.
So what you're really saying is that it's back to a sense of gut feel sometimes.
You know, there's a very interesting piece published the other day by a gentleman called Rory Sutherland, a sort of ad agency
legend in London. That's
100%.
right. Yeah.
And you know, he mentioned this one really funny thing. He was in a conversation where someone was talking about moving everything online, especially in the travel industry. And there's a stat that online for travel, 0.3% of visitors actually convert. right? And obviously the idea is let's move everybody to online because it's the most efficient way. But from an effectivity point of view, 33% of people who call convert. But no one ever stops to think about, well, if it might be more efficient, but is it more effective? I challenge him one more and say, I don't also care if it's effective. Is it meaningful? Like, is it useful? Does it add value? And I think any brand that genuinely wants to add value and pursues a line in that kind of manner is probably going to find over time that they're more effective and more efficient.
Yatish Nasi from Grid Worldwide, thank you very much for the insight. Appreciate it. Now, coming up on the program, why an international expert tells us that consumers are suffering from what he terms innovation fatigue.